you to be our backup. We need you to vote for Kari Lake for Arizona's governor because her opponent is horrible. If you want to see those progressive left policies implemented in the state, then you're part of the problem. We need people to open their minds, open their eyes, and do what's right. There's only one candidate left to vote for. It's Kari Lake. And I can tell you with Kari as governor and with Abe as our attorney general, the bad guys are going to look at Arizona and skip right past us and maybe go to Colorado, maybe go to Washington, go to Oregon, hell, go to California. Don't come here. Because I'm telling you what, Kari has a big major plan in place because law enforcement is one portion of public safety. But I know Kari has a big plan as governor that's going to make our community safer. It's going to bring jobs into those communities. Good jobs equals hope. When people have hope, they're less likely to commit crime. Kari is ready and able to do wonderful things for our state. And as you've all heard, don't California my Arizona, and we mean it, because law enforcement in the state won't take it. The men and women across this country have been demoralized. Don't do it to Arizona. Again, I'm going to ask the voters, please back us up. We need your vote. We need you to vote for Kari Lake. The alternatives are going to be unimaginable. Our communities will be unsafe. Please vote for Kari Lake. And with that being said, it's my great honor to introduce Kari Lake as Arizona's next governor.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it so much. Hello, everybody. Good to be here. Thank you. It's great to be flanked by men and women in law enforcement and many citizens who care deeply about having safe streets. I just had some stats handed to me, and I can't tell you that I was surprised, I'll be honest. I mean, and you all shouldn't be surprised either because you cover the news. And you know this is happening. Violent crime up more than twice the national average right now. Property crimes higher than the national average. And even from our friends over at the Arizona Republic, shootings involving Phoenix police officers for the first half of 2022 are higher than all in 2021. We have got to stop this assault on our police. Our streets are not safe right now. We need more police officers, and we need the media to back down and back our officers. Every time one of our brave men and women in law enforcement makes a human mistake, and it happens, life or death decision they're making in a split second, and they're in the middle of a storm, the media turns on them and is the judge and jury. It's wrong. And I want these men and women behind me to know that on your darkest day, on your toughest day, when you're in the middle of that storm, I will be standing right there by you as your governor. I will not step away. I will not waver. I will support you until you have due process. That's what these men and women deserve. They're going out there every day. And I don't think any of you in the media have to put on a bulletproof vest to do your job. But these men and women do. And the men and women that they represent do. And the smugness that comes from the media, whenever there is an incident with police, you rush to judgment, you turn on the police, and it's got to stop. You're making our state less safe, and we need to support our police officers, and I will do that. And I want to tell you how I'm going to do that. I've got a couple things I want to share with you, and I don't know, Justin, if you shared this letter that you sent to Katie Hobbs, my opponent. Did you have? I don't know if you've all gotten this. I think that we handed a copy of this to you. The fact that this letter has to be written to a gubernatorial candidate, asking her to denounce this outrageous defund the police talk and rhetoric, to step away from any organization that demands that she denounce the police. The fact that this is even has to be said is absolutely shocking, especially as our streets are unsafe. I had a father reach out to me just this week, and he sent me a picture of his son's face. His eye was swollen. He had a cut across his cheek. He said, my son works really hard. He works nights at a restaurant. I believe it was downtown. He walks home 4 or 5 blocks after his shift. And out of the blue, a homeless person just reached over and punched him in the face. We've got to have more police officers. And when I'm governor, we will work tirelessly to fill every police department to capacity. We're going to reassess because when I was speaking with the troopers this week, they are way understaffed right now. They're not even up to close to 2022 numbers to deal with the population growth we've had. And so we are going to support them. And I'm going to tell you exactly how. Increased pay. We want to make sure our police officers are being paid more than enough to account for the dangerous job they're doing. I don't know if you realize this, but we spend more than $200,000 training a DPS trooper, and yet we don't pay what neighboring states pay. So often we spend that money, we put that time and investment into our troopers, and in short order, they leave because another state offers them a higher wage, a higher salary. We need to be competitive with other states so that when we put the money into training, we're able to keep these troopers, we're able to keep these officers. They're so precious, each and every one of them. We can't afford to do the training and watch them walk away to another department. We are going to protect qualified immunity come hell or high water. These heroes should never have to worry about being buried under garbage lawsuits. They should never have to worry that. They should never have to worry about doing their job and worrying about being sued and losing everything they've got because they're simply doing their job. We want to restore the matching drop program, and we must get rid of the mandatory increases to the retirement age. These are no-brainers. When you are down thousands of officers and troopers across your state, you've got to do everything in your power to recruit and retain these brave men and women. And we want to end the civilian review boards. Yes, I said it. Anybody who is going to be judging our officers, must have experience to make those judgments. No more activist-led boards. We want people on boards who understand what it means to be a police officer. These men and women every day, when they put their bulletproof vest on and walk out the door and kiss their family, they have no idea if they'll ever walk back in that door and see their family. You and I don't have to worry about that. And the fact that they do such a good job while being underpaid and understaffed is a testament to their care and love for their community and this state. And I just hope to God as we move forward, because I witnessed it with, and Abe mentioned it, with what happened in the so-called Summer of Love, when Katie Hobbs actually was a BLM activist. She's tried to scrub that from her social media, and I don't think many of you have reported that. I witnessed what was happening on the streets, and I witnessed how the media was behaving. I saw a lot of the Black Square supporting BLM, which is a Marxist organization that does nothing to help the Black community. The men and women behind me actually do help the Black community. The men and women behind me support and protect the Black community. They support and protect every community, including yours. And I didn't see any media member put forth anything supporting the police. It was really a shame. So I hope that as you do some self-reflection and you understand what these men and women are up to each and every day, that you will do that self-reflection and start supporting our police officers. And on those dark days when they're making the news, that you'll consider what they're going through, that you'll consider the difficulty of their career and what they do to protect us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie. And future Governor Kari Lake here mentioned a lot about the troopers and the pay and the shortage of staffing. Folks, if you're not aware, there's a huge fentanyl crisis going on in this country. It's coming along the Interstate 8, the I-10, and the I-40, and the I-17. State of Arizona is a major hub to the rest of this country for fentanyl. Fentanyl deaths will go up. The cartel is getting more creative. They're coloring the fentanyl pills now to attract kids. And as a validation of what's going on in this state and the help that we need from the community and your votes, I'd like to also introduce Jeff Hawkins. He is the president of the Arizona Troopers Association to say a few words.
Thank you, Justin. We do echo the words that have been spoken. The state troopers are led by the governor, and we are happy to endorse Kari Lake as our next governor. We're confident that her leadership will help us with these perilous times that we're dealing with. DPS has a 25% vacancy rate. We were one of the lowest paid law enforcement officers in the state. We've met with Kari Lake. We're confident with her leadership that we'll be able to bring DPS back to the numbers that it needs to be able to interdict the fentanyl, to interdict all the human trafficking that's going on. That's one of our primary roles. And we're very pleased to have Kari Lake bringing this mantle forward. And it's a tough conversation to have, but we're happy that she's running for governor. We're encouraged by her, and it's not a tough job. And we're thankful that she's taken the mantle and she's going to back the women and men that wear the uniform. And with that, we endorse her, and we're happy to help her in any way we can. So thank you very much, Kari.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks. You know, thank you. I appreciate that so much. And I know that the hard work that you do around the state, and it's not all inner city stuff. It's not all city crimes and things that you see here. It's helping our rural communities. They depend on our DPS troopers. And that's why it's so important to expand and make sure we're fully hired and fully staffed, because our smaller communities, that's their law enforcement. And Justin mentioned our very bold policies. We are going to secure the border and stop Arizona from being known as the fentanyl pipeline that's bringing this incredibly deadly, dangerous drug into Arizona and into the whole country. I'm not comfortable with Arizona being known as the pipeline for the deadliest drug we've ever known. They're trying to destroy our communities. Look on the streets, the homeless, drug-addled homeless. We know that our youth are getting their hands on these powerful drugs. China and the narco-terrorists are trying to destroy America through this drug epidemic that they are creating. You don't have to look far back. Well, actually, it is several centuries ago in history, the opium wars. You can bring down a society, you can bring down people with drugs, and that's what they're trying to do. And it is imperative that we tackle this crime that's happening. We tackle what the cartels are trying to do, and we're going to need law enforcement to help with that. Whether it's what we're going to work on in the border to secure our border, whether it is the work we're going to do to end chronic street homelessness, get these people help, get them off the streets, and restore law and order for our hardworking, tax-paying citizens who want their parks back and want their streets back. So we're going to be relying on the police, and we want to do broken window policing. If you're familiar with what happened in the 90s in New York, when they turned that place around because it was completely crime-riddled. And Rudy Giuliani came in short order turned that place around, but he could not have done it without the men and women in law enforcement. And so we're going to be relying on some of these brave individuals behind us and the teams that they represent to make sure that we turn Arizona into the safest state in the country, because we can't be a great state unless we are a safe state. And so with that, if we have any questions, I want to bring Abe back up here. We need this man in the AG's office. We need someone who respects law and order. And I encourage everyone out there, all of your listeners and viewers, to vote Republican up and down that ticket. If you want a safe state, vote for Lake and vote for Abe. If you have any questions, we're happy to take them. Justin?
So as you said, we're seeing a massive shortage in police officers, thousands. And at the same time, violent waves of crime sweeping across our nation. What impact would further defunding the police have on low income and minority communities? Yeah, for either one of you.
What you're seeing now is that's what the whole defund the police movement back in the summer of 2020. I mean, it affected minority communities the most. And this is what the media never wants to cover. I mean, actually, if you go into this inner cities of Phoenix, I used to be a prosecutor. My jurisdiction was downtown Phoenix. And that's why I'm so happy to see future Governor Kari Lake's homeless policy, because our homelessness is increasing, and it's mental illness, and it's affecting minorities at a higher rate than most. And if you're looking at the Biden administration's policies in the past 18 months with the rising inflation, all of this is happening due to this lawlessness. I mean, if you're looking at why things are costing more, it's because these smash and grabs that are occurring all across our state and our country. And what happens now is the legislature just empowered the Attorney General's office to have the organized retail theft unit. So I want to expand upon that, but you're right. Right now, what you're seeing is this whole defund the police and the demoralization of the police is affecting minority communities the most. So, this is why it's imperative we cannot allow Democratic candidates to win at any level in Arizona this November.
I'll just add to that a bit. And we talked about the smash and grab. A lot of this is happening in minority communities. And when a store has to endure that over and over and over, eventually they shut down the shop. And pretty soon you're left with hollowed out neighborhoods where minority citizens live, and they don't have the store that they used to have because nothing's being done to stop this kind of crime. If you walk down just a few blocks, I believe it's this way down the street, you will see block after block, it's a homeless encampment. This is not in Paradise Valley. This is in downtown Phoenix, in a poorer neighborhood. Let me tell you, if that moved to another neighborhood, we would be quickly dealing with the homeless crisis. But I want the people, the good people of Arizona, not to worry, because we will deal with the homeless situation. We will offer tough love to get these people help, because we will restore law and order. And that way, families, no matter what neighborhood you live in, no matter what zip code you live in, you can feel free and safe to walk the street, ride bikes with your kiddos, get out there and enjoy the beautiful climate that we have in Arizona, and not have to worry about becoming the victim of a crime.
Kari, as governor, obviously you would have a lot of authority over DPS. You could deal with the salary issues and the vacancies they have there. But what about local law enforcement, the Phoenix PD, the agencies that most folks call when they call 911 when there's a problem? What can the governor, what can the state do with respect to that, with those salaries, those vacancies?
Well, we can put pressure on the cities, and we plan to do that. We want broken window policing, and you can look into the definition of that. When you start looking away from the small crimes and the medium-sized crimes and ignoring that, it creates more and more crime. Lawlessness breeds more lawlessness. And it used to be that we were looking away from small crimes, vandalism and such. Then you look away from trespassing. Next thing you know, you've got smash and grab. Next thing you know, you have a store that's being completely gutted by people coming into it. And that's what we're seeing right now. So we are going to strongly encourage cities, all of the cities in Arizona, to do that type of policing, that very serious policing. And if they refuse, then we're going to look at withholding state shared funds.
Carrie, a lot of people of color feel like they're unfairly targeted by police. Are they wrong to feel that way? And regardless of whether there's any merit there, what can you as a governor do to improve perception of police? Ensure that everybody feels like
Can
the
you
police
repeat
are out
the
there for
first
them.
part of that? I missed that.
Yeah, a lot of people of color feel like they're
A lot
unfairly
of people
targeted.
of color. A lot of people of color. How many people of color have you talked to about that?
I mean, if you look at surveys,
Which surveys? I'm happy to look at those stats, because I will tell you this, that I talk to people of color. I talk to all Arizonans. They're all concerned about the crime. Just because your skin isn't the same color as yours doesn't mean you want your kids to be walking down the street in an unsafe neighborhood. Every Arizonan wants safety and security in their neighborhood. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. And if you look at stats, you will look and see that police do not target people of color. That is a lie that's been perpetuated by the left and then spread and disseminated and respread in the media. Check the stats. Check the stats.
You don't believe that's an opinion a lot of people of color have?
I don't. I think you guys find one or two people, 3 or 4, and they're activists oftentimes, and then you spread that narrative. Go into a neighborhood and ask the people in neighborhoods that are minority neighborhoods, do you want fewer police? Do you want to defund the police? They will look at you like you are the craziest person on the planet. Nobody wants that.
Rely on and that you believe Americans should rely on.
Wow, there's a lot in there. Can I address some of the stuff early on?
Sure, all of it. That'd be great. Thank you.
Because you threw a lot out. The Pew Resource Center
The Pew Research Center.
said perception is different from reality.
Right. And
Perception is different from
he
reality.
said felt. People
Okay.
feel that they're targeted.
Well,
So,
okay. Perception is different from reality.
another question. What are 3 resources you believe are reliable that
I
people
think
should use?
I think John Solomon Just the News is one of the most reliable, and I think Epic Times is reliable. I think they cover things fairly. And then I look to a couple of independent journalists, Cheryl Atkinson. That's who I go to, and those are 3 sources I trust. Don't trust a lot of them in this room, and I think one person that I do like a lot is Jordan, because at least he has the courage to stand up against the narrative that the mainstream media pushes. And he probably has more viewers than you guys, actually, because he does have that courage. I know that, Joe, and I hate to say it, I get access to the ratings. And, TV markets here in Arizona have access to about 6.5, 7 million people. That's a huge TV market. That's what you have access to every night when you put your 10 o'clock news on. You have reach of about 7 million people, but only 2,000 people watch your newscast on average. That's pretty pathetic. That shows you that the public has lost their trust in you. I looked at some actual research and facts and stats that showed that when it comes to trust, Joe Biden, Congress, both have more trust than media. And I think you guys need to work on that. I really, really do. Because I don't want to see you all go under and have 0 viewers. Well, maybe I do actually, but I hope that you don't want that. I hope that you don't want that. I hope that you love this community enough to be fair, cover these men and women fairly, cover crime fairly, and not just push a liberal agenda.
Do you think that the media that's pushing this racist narrative, this victim mentality, do you think they're contributing to the perception that they speak of right now?
Absolutely. Do you want to talk about that, Abe?
Yeah. Perception becomes reality. And that's where, this is a false argument to use. If you ask law enforcement up here right now whether they feel unfairly targeted by the media, they would say yes. And it's because of what you have done in the past few years. If you look at the George Floyd BLM riots that were going on in the summer of 2020, that narrative, that perception was day in, day out. Remember, we forgot about COVID during those times. You remember that? Remember, there was no mask, there's no social distancing. It went away and it magically came back because you dictate the narrative. And that's where the perceptions that you've created is false. And that's why we're standing for truth. And that's why I always have the backs of our law enforcement officers.
I will say one thing really quickly. Our men and women in law enforcement, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but they need to know that when they're in a dangerous situation, they need to look at people and be colorblind. And Tyler Moldovan, who I think one of the last times I was down here was for a benefit for him, an officer who was shot. When he came around that corner, and I think because he was pursuing somebody who was of color, I hope that in his heart, there was no fear in how he could handle that situation because he didn't want to be on the receiving end of what the media would do to him if the incident went south. If the incident went south. And the incident went south, and he was the one who got shot and barely clung to life. And it's only through prayer, God, and a miracle that Tyler Moldovan is with us today. So that's how what you guys do affects these men and women. That's how what you guys do affects them. And what was your question, Jordan?
Why do you think the media is pushing this narrative? Do you think they want the chaos that we saw in 2020 in the summer of love?
I don't know. I really don't. And when I first came to town 27 years ago, I had the great privilege of working actually with Joe's father, Kent. God rest his soul. He was a good man. And when I walked into that newsroom, there was a mix of journalists, many who had decades of experience in the market. They were fathers and mothers. They were in their 50s and 60s. And I think over time, a lot of the media outlets got purchased and bought, and a conglomerate came in and bought up a whole bunch of them. And pretty soon we have 5 or 6 owners of all of the media. And what do? They try to cut the bottom line, cut cost over and over and over again. And pretty soon those men and women who are journalists who have decades of experience, depth in the market, roots in the market, a family in that market that they're covering, they get pushed out and they get replaced with 4 people fresh out of journalism school. And sadly, our colleges, is no secret, have been pushing a very liberal, socialist, and in some cases even a Marxist agenda. So we're getting young people who are being trained in journalism school not to be unbiased, but rather to put their opinions in stories and to cover things through the lens of a social justice activist. And that's what I think has gone wrong, if you want my opinion. I think we're... Do you want any question of the men and women behind us?
I have a quick border question for you. What do you think of busing immigrants to other states, sanctuary states? Is that something that you would continue to expand, contract?
I've talked about this. I think I've actually enjoyed watching it because I've enjoyed watching these liberal cities, these liberal mayors have to deal with just a small, tiny fraction of what border states deal with. But I'm really not for continuing to traffic and smuggle human beings. I think that we need to close down the illegal traffic at the border. Close down the illegal traffic at the border. Each and every person that comes in is an indentured servant to the cartels. Think about that for a minute. They come in here and they've got to pay off the cartels. And we have a federal government looking the other way. They're part of the problem. And anybody who supports what's happening on the border is supportive of cartel activity and narco-terrorism. So I think it is effective in that it wakes people up. But my goal would be to stop people from coming over, quickly get people processed, and send them back across the border and out. I think I would, yeah. I mean, this is happening right now. I don't know how much longer it's going to go on. I never want to say never, because we might have to start moving. If we get so overcrowded with people, we may have to start moving them out. But I think the message has been sent to these cities. You see them in an absolute panic, and it's almost laughable because they don't want us doing anything at the border. But yet, when we send 50 people, it's a humanitarian crisis. We're dealing with thousands of people coming across. Talk about a crisis. And our own vice president, who is allegedly the border czar, doesn't think we have a problem at the border. She needs to come to the border. I'm inviting her to the border. I would be happy to take her on a tour of the border, and she needs to see firsthand what's going on. It's disgusting what's happening. Children are being trafficked. Some of them end up in the sex trade. We don't even know where these kids are going. It's appalling.
I have a question for Abe. So I wanted to know that recently financial statements just came out showing that Stacey Champion, who is a top campaign aide for Chris Mays, your opponent, has repeatedly been funding Defund the Police movements. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Doesn't surprise me. She's a kook, and my opponent hires kooks because she is a kook. I mean, if you look at what's going on, is my opponent tries to act like she's this moderate, but it's false. I mean, she is supported. She has some, but she has not even condemned her top campaign consultant, who has said, quote, all law enforcement officers equals killing Black folks. She has not condemned her top campaign consultant, who said that she wants to remove all school resource officers from our schools. So that is the policies, that's what's happening from the Democrats. They're making us less safe by having this open border crisis, fentanyl, not in our inner cities now, but also in our suburbs. So this is where, it doesn't surprise me that she surrounds herself by someone like that who espouses those disgusting views. And I've called for her to fire her, and she won't even condemn her. So that's what tells you how she would be as Attorney General. So that's exactly why I've received the endorsement of the Arizona Police Association, because they know I'm going to have their backs. But Chris Mays, she's a chameleon, and everyone recognizes that.
Abe, last night we reported that 56% more shootings took place last year against law enforcement. There is increased aggression against law enforcement. It is a problem. If you are Attorney General, you would work with federal law enforcement fairly closely, I would imagine, in some ways. We talk about the power of the message. Defund the police is a powerful message. Last week, former President Trump said the FBI and Department of Justice are destroying our community. Do you believe that's a helpful message when you talk about respecting law enforcement? And are you willing to denounce it?
This is a silly question because you're trying to make that statement out to him saying all law enforcement. What he's talking about is the top officials who work out of Washington, D.C. They are political appointees. They are not law enforcement. So no, when we're talking about the FBI and the Department of Justice, yes, they've been politicized. And that's exactly what we're trying to prevent. All law enforcement officers want to do is uphold the law and serve their communities, whether it's at the FBI or whether it's down into our local law enforcement officials. But no, I mean, if you're looking, that question isn't a fair question. He's talking about the top levels of the FBI, the Department of Justice, who are political appointees by this administration.
He didn't say that. He just said the FBI and Department.
You know what he meant.
Yeah.
You know what he meant.
That was his statement.
Can I make a quick statement on that? And we're going to be putting this out on Rumble. And I hope the people watching this realize when they're hearing the tone of the question and what the content of the question is. When you're hearing it from the liberal-run news, you always hear that they're aiming for their agenda, their narrative. You heard it in that last reporter's question. It started off with talking about defund the police, and then it went into an attack trying to push against President Trump. Started off with a question about how our officers might be aiming and really trying to hurt our minority communities. You hear their agenda in their question. And I ask people, when you're out there listening to media and you're trying to discern who's legit and who isn't, listen to the narrative they're pushing in their question. It's all right there. It's real easy to see. We want to thank you all for being here. And we ask that you consider this community and the hardworking men and women not just the ones behind us, but the thousands of people they represent who go out every day to work. They do so gladly. They risk their lives for you and your safety and ours and our families. And please give them the respect they deserve. I want each and one of them to know that they will have a partner on the 9th floor with me, and I will have their back. Thank you so much for being here.